Hello there, YouTube and YouTubers. Today we're going to be talking about our first impressions about the new set Strixhaven, which has been released, of course, about 7 days ago. Ever since the release, we've played about 50 games with the new set, so we've got some fairly new ideas about the set, but we're also at the same time starting to form our opinions about things happening in the set. So you may be wondering, what are some of our first impressions about the new set? Well, it's actually quite a simple set. There are not that many mechanics in the set, and that means that there are not that many new things you need to learn about how the new mechanics work or how they interact with other older things. So mostly what you're learning is which cards do I find good and which cards interact quite well in the set with each other, but not so much how do I play the set. Apart from that, we've also seen that in the 50 games we've played so far, that it's not that restrictive of a set. So if you want to play more than 2 colors, it's very easy to do so. There are quite a few cards which allow you to go into an extra color. And that just means that the colleges are very open to intermingling between them. If you find a very good card which is in one of your colors but not all, it's still very possible that you'll play it in the end of your draft deck. One other thing that is maybe kind of obvious but which really stood out to me is that the combination of Learn, so Learn and Magecraft, is very strong. A Magecraft card asks you to cast multiple instants or sorcery before this card becomes good, rather than playable. And the Learn card will always find another sorcery from your sideboard, which is of course a great way to cast 2 or more instants or sorceries. Then as a bit of a bonus tip, I've, to the left of me, decided to include a few of my most favorite comments of each of the colors. I think the environmental sciences is secretly the best lesson in the set, maybe except for the mythic rare, but apart from that, there is not a single lesson in any of the colors, or in the non-colored, that is better, in my opinion, than environmental sciences. Then I had to choose between Combat Professor or Expel between those two for the best white common in the set. Currently I'm on Combat Professor, but maybe later on I'll go to Expel instead. Frost Trickster is, of course, a very good 3 mana 2/2 flying, with upside. I think it's actually one of the stronger flying creatures we've seen at common rarity lately. Then we have the black Lash of Malice, which is a very efficient removal spell. It's hardly ever used as a boost to any of your creatures, but the -2 it gives is very strong because there are quite a few creatures at 2 and 3 mana which have 2 toughness which need to be removed. So there are quite a few creatures that need to be removed which have 2 toughness and cost 2 or 3 mana, and the Lash of Malice is very good at doing so, of course, because it only costs 1, which will give you tempo advantage. Also, removing blockers on your opponent's side is going to be very good for your Silver Quill decks. The creatures you can remove with the Lash of Malice are most of the Pride Mages, and also some of the 2 mana legendary creatures in the set. The Mage Duel is a very strong fight spell, which can be combined very well with any other card, of course, but you will often have a deck with 10 or more instants or sorceries, which means that the Mage Duel will quite often be only 1 mana to have a very profitable fight with one of your opponent's creatures. The Heated Debate has the "this card can't be countered" part on it, which is more often relevant than you would expect. There's Ward in this set, which just means that you don't have to pay the Ward cost when you use a Heated Debate on a creature, because the card would have been countered. But Heated Debate just says, I can't be countered. So Heated Debate wins in that sense. And then the 4 damage you can do to a creature or planeswalker is usually big enough. We've also noticed that the Mystical Archive cards are a lot more prevalent than we would have expected before drafting with the set. What I personally didn't know is that there will be 1 Mystical Archive card in every single pack you play with, which means that you will find one of the cards, which is not specifically designed for this set, but still good in every pack you draft with. This also means that there is some reason to think about the uncommon quality Mystical Archive cards, because the lowest rarity a Mystical Archive card can have is uncommon. But that, strangely enough, also means that the uncommon Mystical Archive cards somehow become common in your packs. So we've got these uncommon Mystical Archive cards here, which I think that you should think a little about while you're drafting and also while you're playing your game. Especially Negate, I think, is a very good thing to think about when you're playing Magic the Gathering. If you're banking on one of your tricks taking over the game, but you're playing against blue, it is a reasonable thought to think, hey, my opponent might have negate, specifically for my non-creature spells. Personally, I've also found that negate in this format is a main boardable card. As we said earlier, it's very common, reasonable to think that most decks will have 10 or more non-creature spells in them. Which also ties well into our next point, few creatures. If you want to make a deck which has very few creatures in it, because you, for instance, have a very good reason to do so, maybe your non-creature spells are extremely strong, maybe your creature spells all have Magecraft, or maybe you even have Cody for Kiffer's Codex, which of course asks you to play very many non-permanent spells. Well, it's very possible in this format to play a deck with 8, maybe even less creatures in it, because some of your sorceries, or some of your learn cards even, will be a creature token. For that very same reason, I also really like bounce spells and other spells that, for a very short time, remove a creature from your opponent's side. In this format, you will meet very big tokens, say 4/4 or bigger, or maybe a 2/1 flying. Both of those very big tokens, so say 4/4 or bigger, or 2/1 flyings, are actual cards, and being able to bounce actual cards to your opponent's hand, thereby destroying them permanently, is quite strong. So bounce in this format is quite good. So far we've really liked playing with the format, but there's just one question that's remaining on my head, which is, where is the aggro? Oftentimes I've played with a very dirtly decks, which is to say decks that don't really do anything proactive, that maybe do a lot of drawing cards, putting lands in play for mana, so the Cultivate, for instance, does that. And normally this behavior, the drawing many cards, gaining card advantage, putting lands into play while not playing creatures, would be punished by some sort of an aggro deck. But in this format I've really not ever felt like I've been under pressure to play a creature on turn 2 or 3. This also means that the lesson cards are a lot better, because they are quite slow, but they give good card advantage. I really hope that as the format matures, we'll find some sort of an aggro deck in one of the colors which we're just currently not really drafting all that well, because that will make the format a lot healthier and it will make for more diversity in drafts. But for the time being, if you're drafting a format, I would say make a very dirtly deck, think about card advantage, don't be shy to play more than 2 colors, and fourthly, also think about the mystical archive cards, because some of them are very strong and you will see them quite often. Anyway, the format so far has been a lot of fun, especially playing so many instants and sorceries over the course of the game is amazing. It's quite different from Kaldheim. What we've also really liked is, well, I guess as a 5th point, cards themselves upon first read in this format are quite easy to understand, which is great, especially when compared to Kaldheim, where even at the end of the format we often had to, was this a sorcery speed card? Was this a put it into play tapped, or was this a put it into play just untapped? Was this a counter snow lands, or was this a counter snow permanence? The format in Kaldheim was very complex, more so than it's healthy, I think, but the cards in this format, Strixhaven, are easy to understand, but at the same time there are a lot of fun things to do, especially thanks to the Mystical Archive, but also because of all the instants and sorcery and copying of spells and all the things you can do. I hope you had a lot of fun. I hope you had, well, some success, of course, as well with the format so far. And if you haven't yet, please just start drafting the format. It's not that complicated. It's quite fun to do, and you will very soon have success with it. Anyway, if you liked the video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to see more videos about Magic the Gathering, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to, of course, see you around.